Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of Divulgence. I'm Jordan Vezeau, and I'm super excited for this next episode. It is a banger. You're going to love it. First, I just want to get a few things out there. I am still trying to get on Rockfin. I don't know what the holdup is, but if anyone has any pull or ideas on how to get my creator page going quicker, that would be much appreciated. In the meantime, you can check us out on YouTube for videos. Please subscribe, give us some thumbs up, a nice comment. Any support is much appreciated. Audio-wise, we are on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Stitcher, and Pandora. Social media-wise, we are on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at DivulgencePod. If you go to Twitter and check it out, we do have a giveaway going on. There is still a few days left to enter and win that contest, so please check it out. Another thing I'm going to be doing moving forward is including resources in the episode descriptions. So that will be any kind of books, documentaries, any sort of resources that are mentioned or referenced in the video or that just may have significance to the topic. So I will go back to the old episodes and add that for you guys, and I will add it moving forward, and we'll see what it does for you guys if you guys appreciate it. That is it for now, just a quick message, but I do have some awesome stuff cooking up in the next few weeks, so make sure to stay tuned. Share it with your friends, coworkers, family, anyone, whether it's for entertainment purposes or just trying to wake some people up. I think the show is great. I hope you do too. Now please enjoy episode 4. Hello everyone, and welcome to Divulgence. I am Jordan Vezeau, and I'm so happy for you to be here. I have some wonderful guests, as always, to talk about some interesting things. So to get the ball rolling, let's introduce them. My first guest is an author of many great books, including one that we will be referencing today, his best-selling Hidden History, an expose of modern crimes, conspiracies, and cover-ups in American politics. He also writes some excellent blogs that I will include in the episode descriptions. Please help me welcome Donald Jeffries. Hey, Don, how are you, my friend?
Hey, thanks for having me, Jordan. Good to be here.
Good, thanks. Thanks for coming back. I'm so excited for you to be here. Our next guest is an author, filmmaker, investigator, whose recent book, Global Death Cult, The Order of Nine Angles, Atomwaffen, and the Slaughter of the Innocents, is available now. He is also the host of his own podcast called William Ramsey Investigates that I am personally addicted to right now. So please check that out. I will also include his information in the episode description. Everyone, please welcome back William Ramsey. Hey, William.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me back, Jordan. Great to be with you again.
Good, thanks. I'm doing great, and I'm so happy for you to be here as well.
Thanks.
So today we are going to dabble through the U.S. presidents and some of the stuff that is quite unknown to the general public. This is kind of the stuff that you guys specialize in. You guys have a lot of experience and writing experience on these topics. I thought you guys would be the best gentlemen to bring in to discuss it. So I mean, there's so much to discuss today. I'm sure we'll jump around all over the place, but I guess the easiest place may be to start with the Clinton machine, as William has dubbed it. So Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, obviously Bill Clinton was president at one point, and him and Hillary have had their positions in politics for quite a long time. And they've made their rise to power with a lot of bodies lying in their path. So one that might be good to start the ball rolling would be Vince Foster. Firstly, just want to shout out to Norm Macdonald, who had an hilarious bit that he did with the weekly update with Bill Clinton and Vince Foster. He caught a lot of heat for it, but he just kept going, and it was hilarious. So if you can still find those videos on YouTube or anywhere, definitely check those out. Because
it's interesting, Jordan, because I downloaded one video. Maybe I can send it to you.
Okay.
But it is of Norm Macdonald. I think he's on The View. See if you get
yes,
that video, the one with him on The View, is just hilarious because they're just trying to calm him down, and he's just having a great time with it. Yeah, and he's hammering the point because
I mean, he just keeps using pretty graphic words, but it is uploading right now. It's about 75% done. But I would recommend putting that in just to kind of honor his passing into the next world. I think that these comedians really ended up turning out to be the most honest, I think, just because they're the comedians, so they really can get things across. Can you play that?
these words are droll, sarcastic, controversial, hilarious. Well, those are some of the words that are used to describe Norm Macdonald's character on his sitcom Norm. But as you will see in this clip, people may think twice before they use the words smooth or charming. Take a look.
Hey, Lori. Hey, look, I can see your underwear there.
You're supposed to see them.
Yeah, that's a little desperate, isn't it?
I'm playing tennis with Shelley.
You're playing tennis with Shelley?
Yeah.
Hey, I have an idea that would even be more fun for you. If I played tennis with Shelley while you, I don't know what you do, who cares?
And in spite of that, please welcome Norm Macdonald.
What's up, man?
Okay, Norm, you're Canadian.
Yes, I am.
So what do you think of this whole presidential
Yes,
mess?
he is.
Well, I hope that the Democrats don't steal the election from the winner, you know, but who knows?
You like George Bush, don't
I
you?
love George Bush, man. He's a good man, decent, you know, none of this.
Hey, Georgie.
He's, you know, he's not a liar, a crook, murderer, or anything like that. So it'd be good to get the. See, I think we should get the homicide out of the White House and get like a fresh start, because we don't want any more murderers.
I think we should just go on to the next question.
Oh.
Murderers. Yeah.
Oh, Clinton, he murdered a guy.
Yeah, you know, we're not allowed to, you're not allowed to put out no
He
accusations.
murdered a guy.
Too far. Let's just go on to the next question.
Yeah.
This is not my week. What can I tell you?
Oh, it's not mine either, and I'm being very nice, okay? Be a good boy. Now, Norm.
Did you never hear that?
No. Listen, we don't need
I don't want to get
talk
into
about
this, and I don't want to hear it, and this is not the place to make those accusations, and you're supposed to be funny. Let's get on with it.
Exactly. There you go.
This is a live show.
Now we're not Norm, but you have been properly chastised by Barbara, so I'm not going to ask the next
I
question.
thought it was a matter of record.
Shut up. Look,
Let me do this, okay?
I'll tell you what's a matter of record. You will not be invited back if you don't shut up. All right, now. Let's talk football.
All right, manslaughter.
Let's talk football.
Norm, did you ever hear the word? Oh,
The phone is
I
ringing.
certainly hope that's somebody calling to tell you to go home.
Oh, no.
Dude, you got a phone ringing.
Oh.
Answer the phone.
Hello?
Norm, listen, not only have you annoyed us, but I've read that you have actually annoyed one of your idols. Who is that?
Oh, the great Bill Cosby.
Yeah, what'd you do?
Oh, my God, I love that guy. He's my hero, you know, just like you. Maybe George or Bill Clinton would be your hero. I love
Stopping you, is it?
No, I seem to like Bill Clinton.
Really? And this man leads into our show on Friday night.
I know.
It's all right, his career's over after this anyway. Who cares? Go ahead, Norm.
No, Bill Clinton, who's a great man, obviously. You know, everybody has their opinions, right?
Are you moving along?
No,
You're
Bill
gonna get to the point.
Cosby.
What's in this coffee? What are you drinking in there?
Well, Bill Cosby is a great man, first
Okay.
of all. There has never been any accusations toward Bill Cosby about any.
Will you just tell us what you did about Bill
That
Cosby?
aged well.
I met him. I opened for him at a club, and he was a great man, you know. He's my hero of all time. You know how funny Bill Cosby is.
Yeah, so get to the point. I'm going past menopause.
Yeah.
Make the point. Let's go.
Not everything has a point.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah,
Shout
it
out to Norm Macdonald as a great man, as a Canadian, as a comedian. I'm a huge comedy fan, and I'm Canadian, so I mean, I saw a lot of that guy growing up, and yeah, he's hilarious. But yeah, back to the Vince Foster case. William, I know that you have a little bit of experience about that ordeal, so do you mind sharing some of that with us?
I mean, it was pretty much an ordeal. So I think he was found. Clinton got into power in '92, and then Vince Foster 6 months later, who was the deputy counsel for the White House, got found in Fort Marcy Park. declared a suicide, but he was working and left at lunch and supposedly got depressed and drove out to some remote park and walked to the very back of the park and then shot himself. And there's just all of the, all the facts and everything like that associated with that whole thing is all baloney. I mean, he was found laying in a different way. He had a blood pattern. They found a ripped up suicide note in his briefcase later. Then somebody had rifled through all of his stuff. He was involved in Whitewater, which was kind of a real estate scandal having associated back in Arkansas.
In what way was he involved in Whitewater?
It's been a while, but I'm pretty sure that there was some issues regarding these plots of land and whether they were I think it was either being used for money laundering or they were just being used illegally or something like that. And so there was a big scandal about that. It was right around the SNL crisis. It was a long time ago. That's like 30 years ago. So I think that they were involved in that. And there was a guy who suspiciously died in jail who was over that, whose name I can't remember now. But anyway, Vince Foster, that was really it. And, it still is deemed a suicide. But he was probably murdered with a lot of other people. He seemed to be kind of a straight shooter and seemed to want to do the right thing. He's a talented guy. And he was just one of many of these kind of like deaths that happened. Really good book about that, which is a totally suppressed book. It's called Partners in Power. It was written by a guy who used to work with Henry Kissinger. And that book was pretty much suppressed. Yeah, if you can find Partners in Power, I can't remember the author's name right now, but it really covers a lot of the early stuff in a very kind of an academic, somebody who's intelligent, like it wasn't, conspiratainment type stuff. Like he really looked at a lot of the details surrounding a lot of the stuff that was going on in Arkansas, MENA, just all kinds of criminality. Arkansas was always criminality. But yeah, that's just one thing that I worked on that case. I worked with John Clark, who I just had on, and we talked about that. It was 25 years ago. I was the one who kind of delivered everything. There was an addendum. It's called the Clark Addendum to the Starr Report. Kenneth Starr, the same one who represented Jeffrey Epstein. And his kind of sidekick, actually, there was a guy by the name of Michael Rodriguez who quit out of disgust because he sensed a cover-up. And then who took his place but Brett Kavanaugh. And so, that was it's kind of like one of those things. And clearly everybody in D.C. just shut up about it and clammed up. But it's just one of those among many suspicious things that have happened all around their career. I mean, even Bill Clinton himself is suspicious. Like that's not even his real name. He took his name of his stepfather. Sure. There's all kinds of questionable things about his background. But Brett Kavanaugh, I think when he was trying to get on the Supreme Court, there's a personal gripe between the Democrats or the left against him for if you really want to have a bad day, you can look at what Brett Kavanaugh put in the footnotes to the Starr Report. But pretty graphic, actually, I would say pretty pornographic. A lot of the stuff that wasn't put out in the public about Lewinsky, he didn't have a problem publishing in those footnotes. Wow. So I can see why they would not be happy about him. But yeah, so it's just one of those long, stories about the Clinton body count and all these other things. Yeah. I mean, it's just really been a long arc and really is symptomatic of people who run our country are very corrupt. And it's kind of like an odd way that the American public kind of looks at their political leaders. It's very strange how tolerant they are to their behavior. It's really amazing.
Well, hey, we just reelected Trudeau, so
supposedly. And who knows about the elections these days?
Yeah. I mean,
so
yeah.
Supposedly,
the news is saying
Orange
anyways.
County. Yeah, Newsom won Orange County, which is stalwart kind of right-wing Republican by 52 to 47, and that's where kind of a lot of the recall stuff came out of. So that was just kind of crap. So we're actually, we're clearly not a free country anymore. No way. The U.S. is not free. And I think that's probably the trend globally is to have these kind of accounting, electronic counting systems put in wherever they want.
And Bill, you were working in Washington.
Yeah, I was in Washington
at that time during the Vince Foster thing. And you had mentioned that you were the one who brought the addendum around to the congressmen or the senators, or what was it?
So it was also the senatorial offices and the congressional offices. So that was kind of just the way to make sure that they had received it. So I was the one who personally handed it to someone, I walked in. I mean, it's just another story, but it was Arlen Specter's office I went into. I still remember that very vividly because he had kind of like this brag wall of all of his pictures, but they went down so far, like of your standard kind of brag wall, but his pictures were all close, very close to each other. So he had like 40 pictures, very close, and all the way down the wall of him shaking hands with important people. And he was really the guy who put out the single bullet theory, so that probably earned him his bones. But that was one place I went to. I went into the senator who preceded Obama. I handed one right directly to Senator Levin of Michigan. So I mean, I knew people who worked on the Hill, so I was always around the Hill all the time, and I actually worked on the Hill too. So that was not that wasn't something unusual for me because I was always going to D.C. and traveling, and I lived right across in Roslyn, right across from the bridge, right up from Georgetown. So I was definitely around there. But I was within a year of being in D.C. I was like, I got to get the hell out of here, man. I do not want to stay in D.C. This is
caught on quick. Eh?
What's that?
You caught on quick, and
I think a lot of people do, and the people who stay, I think, are a lot different than the people who leave. So it's you kind of see there were other tons of. We used to joke about all the people falling off of apartment buildings and really deciding to commit suicide, or there was a lot of strange things going on there, a lot of real power games, and it was really something else to see it from the inside. A lot of conversations about money laundering, bank accounts in Switzerland and Luxembourg. You just that's what people deal with. So there were all kinds of very questionable activities taking place, and you kind of see it from the inside. You see the kind of corruption from the inside. But I was so naive. I was just definitely provincial. I had no idea. I believed everything that was in textbooks and things like that. So I didn't really have. And you have to remember, this is pre-internet. So you didn't have access for even an alternate story, an alternate narrative. You just had the governmental narrative about everything. So, but I mean, the Clintons is one story, but you can go back to look at LBJ. Guy was a flat-out serial killer, man. I mean, they don't ever talk about him, but I think there were like 7 dead bodies around him even before JFK, and he had a hitman. His name was
Mac Wallace.
Yeah, so Mac Wallace even I think he had his sister killed. LBJ did. And so that's even before. And LBJ, like, one of the weirdest things about him is that he was a total power monger, but decided not to run again. I think it was in 68 or something. So he just quit. Like, why do you quit when you are that type of person? And he died fairly close after that, if I remember. But like, that guy was a literal kind of, I think Roger Stone has this quote about him. I'm going to read it here. It's just an incredible story. I mean, because Roger Stone wrote The Man Who Killed Kennedy, the case against LBJ in 2013, I think it was. But this is what Roger Stone wrote. He says, quote, Lyndon Johnson as a psychopathic serial murderer is not a pleasant topic to think about for establishment liberals who like to think of him as a belated champion of civil rights, voting rights, and a slew of great society programs. In fact, acknowledging the JFK assassination for what it was, a coup d'etat, is discrediting to the narrative of the United States as a beacon of democracy, freedom, and justice, as well as a place that is morally superior to banana republics and third world dictatorships. Establishment conservatives, just like the liberals, choke on that bone in unison.
Jeez.
So anyway, I mean, we can go like all the details about Vince Foster, but I mean, what happens in D.C., a lot of people don't know, is a lot of these guys, they will go in with each other and pay for an apartment so they can take their mistress and something like that, so they don't have to see them at home. So they will go to someplace for lunch, have a drink, bring their, mistress or something like that, and the suspicion is that's how they got Foster, is that they got him there. And that was it. And I've interviewed other people on it. I've interviewed other people who've written books about that, but they speculated that there was a big meeting about a week before he died that took place at a rich guy's house, who I can't remember right now, outside of Maryland. And they think that may have been like the decision where people went, Foster's got to go. He's not on the team, So.
Okay. interesting. Don, I know your book speaks to Vince Foster and the Clintons. I can't remember if it speaks to Whitewater or not, but what's your take on generally? Just to kick it off, what's your take on the Clinton body count? I mean, I've read your book, but for our listeners,
I call the Clinton presidency conspiracy central, and I think it's the most obvious body count of them all. And as William mentioned, LBJ had a body count, but in my book Crimes and Cover-ups in American Politics 1776 1963, which is the prequel to this,
right.
It was written after Hidden History. I talk about the body count. FDR had a pretty impressive body count. Truman had a body count. Kennedy didn't, obviously, and LBJ had a really impressive body count. And then Nixon, some people associated with Watergate, and Jimmy Carter didn't, but certainly Clinton and both Bushes and Obama have all. Trump couldn't find a body count for him, but all those other presidents had. But the Clintons are number one, and Vince Foster is the number one, the crown jewel of the Clinton body count. And what I talk about a lot, I don't know if this is one of what I call calling cards. I'm fond of saying that the people that do these things like to advertise to the public that they're doing it. And because they know no matter how obvious they make it, that very few people, only the most awake people will pay attention to them. So it took me for years, many years of investigating the JFK assassination before I finally realized, I'm talking about this magic bullet and the pristine condition and how it was identical to a bullet shot in cotton wadding. And this is the bullet they planted. So as I think, finally dawned on me, why would sophisticated conspirators plant a bullet that looked like it didn't hit anything? Why wouldn't you at least shoot it into something, make it look like it hit something? They clearly didn't. So that was what I call a card. They wanted them to. And Vincent Solandri talked about that, one of the critics I most admire, and he kind of independently thought that before I did. And another big calling card would be the magical passport of Muhammad Atta that floated down on top of the rubble, where everything else was obliterated, but his passport somehow survived.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. So what may be another calling card with Vince Foster is the Secret Service memo that came out and described how Vince Foster's body was found in his car. Now, this is the Secret Service saying this. Now, could they make a mistake like that? I wouldn't want to be, have trust in someone investigating anything and made a mistake that basic. But again, I prefer to think maybe this is another calling card because no one pays attention to it. I don't even know if Christopher Ruddy or Ambrose Evans Pritchard really talked much about that when they wrote their books. Ruddy's book sold pretty well, and Evans Pritchard investigated it along with some other things in the book. He wrote a pretty good book about Bill Clinton's scandals. But so what does that mean? I don't know, but I think it's it's an indication that they like to play. It's like Jack the Ripper, sent letters and taunting letters to the police, and I think they're pretty much maybe they have some of the traits, the psychopathic traits, and they enjoy doing this. But I think that, and I talked to Linda Tripp during the writing of Hidden History and had a long conversation with her. Very, very nice lady. And I always felt sorry for her because the way she was treated by the press, it's, John Goodman impersonating her on Saturday Night Live was just, reprehensible. And she told me, how do you think my kids felt seeing that? She had young kids at the time. And everything about her was misrepresented. She was old enough to be Monica Lewinsky's mother. And so she said, I wasn't her gal pal. And they looked like I betrayed somebody. She said, I feared for her. I didn't want her. She said that all of the girls in that office there, they all talked about the Clinton body count all the time. They knew about it. And it was common knowledge, and they kind of feared it. And when Lewinsky, she, I guess, knew what Lewinsky was doing, she tried to warn her, hey, this body count going on. Do you really want to get involved in this? And so she recorded their conversations for her own protection, but that's been completely misrepresented. She had every right to do that, and she was really, in her own way, a whistleblower. But, you see how we treat all whistleblowers. So, but, Vince Foster's death certainly was the crown jewel there. But, it was used, like, for instance, Jerry Parks, who was Clinton's head of Governor Clinton's head of his security force there, police force in Arkansas. When he heard about Vince Foster's death, he said in front of his family, I'm a dead man. I'm next. And of course he was, it wasn't long after that he was driving, the way that so many people die, driving along and, on a road, and some mysterious car comes by and opens gunfire and kills him. And then later, as I understand, I had to try to look for an update on this for Hidden History 3, because I'm writing that now. It looked like they tried eventually to pin the murder on Parks' son, which was ridiculous. And I don't know if they ever prosecuted him or not, but that's the last I read about it. I have to, because, so these things, there's a domino effect. There are other murders associated with these events. Probably the only rival to Vince Foster and the Clinton body count are the boys on the tracks, Kevin Ives and Don Henry. That was on Unsolved Mysteries years ago. That's where I first learned about it. I didn't even really associate it with Clinton then, because they really didn't. But I got to be friends with Linda Hayden Ives, who was the only parent involved, who she pushed and pushed and pushed for decades. Tried to get her on my show. She always had health problems, and unfortunately she passed away earlier this year. And then like 2 months later, her daughter died, and I'm still trying to figure out, under very murky circumstances, and I can't really get anybody to tell me exactly what happened, but they're saying medical malpractice or something. I don't know. Certainly was way too young to die about that. But she described, and I quoted from her email to me in the book, where, she talked about deaths I didn't even know about. I mean, there were just a slew of young people that knew her son and Don Henry, and that died, and just, all unnatural. Every one of them unnatural. Motorcycle accident, shooting, suicides, the typical stuff. It's just, if you look at that, no one could possibly, outside of actual organized crime, and even organized crime doesn't kill that many. They're kind of selective. If they have a problem with a rival gang leader or something, they take him out. They don't necessarily, take all his friends out and all, and they don't go after children. They actually have more principles than these people. They actually have some kind of scruples where, we're not going to do that. We're not going to, but these people have no scruples. And just look at the body count for that one particular incident alone. And keep in mind that it wasn't a planned political hit. These boys were out getting high. They were 15, 16 years old. They're out on a hot summer night. They decided to go out and smoke some pot. And they happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, where there was a drug drop. And Dan Harmon, who was Bill Clinton's one of his big thugs down there, that was kind of overseeing this drug operation. He had this, people think he's the one that ordered it. And then, of course, later there was I can't remember her name. Maybe William does, but she was she turned against him and reported all this, and he had her thrown in prison for, I don't know, 10 years or something. I can't remember her name. But so there are these things. And of course you had the Barry Seal thing, because this was all related to Mina. What happened to Barry Seal, and then there's Barry Seal's aide, who was his secretary or something. That I describe all this in Hidden History, who was found, shot to death in her hotel room with a pillow over her head or something. I mean, normal people don't die like this, so it's undeniable. And this, the body count goes right through Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. You had people like that guy, the black guy that was going to testify against him or something, that dropped the barbell on his throat while he's working out and crushed himself to death. I mean, who dies like that? Don't you have spotters? I mean, but with the Clinton people, they do. And even things like Kathleen Willey, who was, we mentioned Roger Stone earlier. It's amazing the way these people, I don't understand the way their minds work, but Kathleen Willey was the strangest of all of Bill Clinton's, the people that he harassed. She had a real chip on her shoulder, and she was never nice to me. And she hated Roger Stone for some reason. And then she started hating me because Roger Stone wrote the foreword to Hidden History, the paperback version. And I said, what? Roger Stone wrote a book, The Clintons' War Against Women, where he made you guys out to be, heroes. And she wouldn't tell me why. She just said, he's horrible. I hate him. So I don't know what he could have done. But at any rate, her original sexual harassment, and again, it ties in Linda Tripp as well, because Linda Tripp was her witness that saw her walking out of the White House, the Oval Office, with her lipstick askew and her hair all messed up, flushed, like something had happened. But she had gone there to ask for a job for her husband, Ed Willey, who was a big-time donor to the Clintons. And unbeknownst to her, at the moment she went there, he was already dead. His body was in the woods. Again, these are wealthy people. Really, they go in the woods to die. I mean, ridiculous. But so if you look at these things, it's and I understand why you see the way Barbara Walters reacted with Norm Macdonald, just simply bringing that up. It's hysterical, emotional reaction, and you see it now with other things, obviously, because everything's controlled now by emotion with identity politics. But that was one of the first. It struck a chord in them. Oh, how dare you, Brit? It immediately censored. Don't you dare bring it up. They have no curiosity about this at all, because they don't want to go there. And because to peel back these layers, because Bill Clinton's, he's a smooth psycho. He's got that smile, and he's But he's a horrible person. I mean, I compare him often to John F. Kennedy because people say he was a womanizer. And even if I believed all the tales about Kennedy, I think they've been greatly exaggerated because the same people that killed him and lied about his death are the ones that promote these theories to try to diminish him and say, well, he wasn't really worth anything anyhow. The guy was a reckless womanizer, and who cares, right? But he's also dying, by the way. At the same time they're telling you he had Addison's disease so badly that he was on death's doorstep. He wasn't qualified to be president, but somehow he was able to have sex with hundreds of women every day and still look like he was kind of running the country. So it was amazing how all this worked out at the same time. But Kennedy was accused of having sex with people like Marilyn Monroe and Angie Dickinson, these movie stars. They were at his same power level. He had no power over them. Bill Clinton was this really despicable creature who, the Paula Joneses of the world, this was a lowly secretary or receptionist, whatever she was. He's the governor of the state. And those are the people that I don't blame JFK or the Kennedys for, having sex with people in their class, which is what they typically do. Bill Clinton did not do that. He's famously, pick up women at Macdonald's and things like that. And he had that black woman that he had the kid, apparently, Danny Williams. So if you look at him, he looks like a black Bill Clinton. He looks, and the poor kid can't get any. Roger Stone tried to help him out too, but he can't get anywhere on his lawsuit. But so there's just a whole can of worms there when you open up with the Clintons, because it's a combination of sophisticated political murders. And again the connections are everywhere. Another subject that I explored in hidden history that people haven't explored is, for instance, they talk about with the boys on the tracks and a lot of these other issues. They had the court. There he is, the black Bill Clinton. The boys on the track. There was the coroner Fahmy Malek, who was incredibly corrupt. Everybody in the public knew him, and he had done things. He had so many absurd rulings on deaths, but he had good reason to be. The Clinton kept promoting him and giving him raises because he had helped cover up his mother's crimes. Bill Clinton's mother was an anesthesiologist nurse who was apparently responsible for at least a couple deaths, and Fahmy Malek helped sweep that under the rug. Wow. So, and they got a little tiny bit of play in the media, but just imagine if Donald Trump's mother had done that. I think it would have gotten some publicity. So clearly it's just for people to sweep this under the rug. There's so much, Whitewater, there's Filegate, Travelgate. I mean, there were so many scandals. And that's why I say Hillary Clinton, because she was there then and all the way up through running for president as well. These are people that are career criminals. I mean, they represent what we think of when we think of the swamp and the deep state, but they're untouchable. And the fact that, you see what happened when somebody like Norm Macdonald, a popular comedian, comes up and just barely mentions it. Oh, he's just, how dare you? And that's where we are. I mean, we can't. So William mentioned Rodriguez, the guy that was eventually, he was a liberal Democrat. And I got into arguments with people. Again, there's a lot of people in the JFK assassination research community that understand that conspiracy, but they certainly won't go there to hear, oh my God, that's terrible. How dare you say there's no such thing as a Clinton body count? And I said, well, look, this guy was a liberal Democrat. He wasn't Jerry Falwell. He wasn't anybody that hated the Clintons. And for that matter, neither was Linda Hayden Ives. And she told me, we weren't really political. We weren't like Republicans that hated Clinton or anything. They just experienced the corruption firsthand because their child tragically died because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I think that we need to keep that in mind, that these are, and when I've talked to some of them, Linda Tripp, and these are real people that are impacted by that. In the case of Linda Ives, she spent decades trying to get at the truth. She ended up dying, heartbroken, I'm sure. And there's a guy, I can't remember his name. She tried to introduce me to him. He's a former wrestler. I don't know if you heard about it, William, that came out and maybe a couple years ago and said he had all these more details about what happened that night or something with Dan Harmon and everything. And he was willing to talk. He disappeared. I still haven't been able to locate. And he was like I said, he was a minor celebrity. He'd been something in WWE.
Yeah, I know, you're right.
Yeah. I don't know what happened to the guy. So that's the that's the world that we, and certainly Patrick Knowlton, you can talk more on, is a guy that whose life was completely disrupted by this, and again tragically died before his time. But the Clinton list of casualties, you said LBJ had a slew of bodies, and he did. But the pile of bodies behind both Bill and Hillary Clinton is you can't match it. I don't think any of all the others put together probably can't come up to the Clinton body count.
I remember somewhere somebody wrote something about just the the ruined lives and wrecked people in the wake of the Clinton machine. They've just ruthlessly destroyed people who got in their way, and all the way. And I think it really plays back to Hillary Clinton. I think everything led up to her 2016 run. I think that she was pretty much the mind behind them both. I mean, I think Bill Clinton had a front thing, but I think that she was actually much stronger mentally than he was.
Oh, and I mentioned the guy that dropped the barbell on his throat, and there were two others. There was one that jumped out in front of a train, an Amtrak, and another guy was, I think, 39. That was the guy that was the lawyer for Bernie Sanders that was presenting a petition, protesting the overt fraud. And I think he dropped out of a heart attack at 39 or something. So, I mean, they were still there, just like you saw in Arkansas.
Warren died. I can't remember what his name was in 2016. Then obviously it was Rich, right?
No, Seth Rich he's probably the crown jewel for her, and that's another one where you mentioned his name. Look at Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity tried for the only time that I know of actually do a half-ass investigation of that on his show, and actually brought on some witnesses on, and he almost lost his job for doing it. And the Rich family, much like Gary Webb's family and all these other, they don't want the truth, and I don't understand that. Why wouldn't you want to know? But you even talk about it. No, we're going with the DC police, never investigating and never solving it. We're going with that. We like that. I mean, would you be satisfied with that? But they are. So obviously somebody paid them off.
Yeah, very suspicious. All that stuff is suspicious. But I mean, Assange pretty much admitted that it was Rich who took the Podesta emails, and then everybody went through the Podesta emails and realized these guys are even more crazy than you think. They're into witchcraft and blood rituals or whatever.
Hundreds of references to pizza and pasta.
Right, all over, and it fit. I mean, it was through that led to Pizzagate and Santis and these weird stuff on Instagram and all the inside stories. Yep. And it was before Epstein, so these guys knew all about Haiti and all kinds of crazy stuff that went on, and just. It's really kind of a new Rome. It shows that aspect of our country where we're detached from its colonial Christian foundations generally to something much different now, where if you're an insider, you're really above the law. They have to know that they're above the law, so that's the whole thing. Is like they know they can get away with these crimes easily.
Yep.
So, sorry, William, to back you up real quick, just for those who aren't familiar with the Seth Rich case, can you just give a quick rundown of who he was and his death?
No, Seth Rich, I think it was 2016. I think it was not September. I think it was earlier before the election. So I think it was maybe August or July, where he was out late at night and he was drinking. He seemed to be bar hopping, headed home, and then was shot and was taken to the hospital. And there's just all kinds of conflicting stories, like whether he was still alive at the hospital, but it was only one bullet. So he died, but then they kind of traced it back to what he was doing. Well, he was in the DNC. He worked for the DNC, and I think he was something like, I can't remember what his job title was, but I think he was doing something where he had access to the computer and the network and stuff like that. And they think he was the one who took all, and he was angry because he was a Bernie bro, and he was angry about how Bernie got elbowed out, which he did in the process. And actually, there was a thing in LA at 2016 where it looks like somebody punched him in the face, like literally he had like a scar on his face. But so Rich was angry, from Omaha, Nebraska, my hometown, and he, was probably, Assange kind of intimated, didn't say it specifically, but intimated that Seth Rich was the person who took the Podesta emails and gave it to WikiLeaks. Okay. And that just started off a whole thing. The whole attack upon Assange was also built upon straw. It really was nothing. He supposedly raped or sexually assaulted. They can't even define it. They supposedly assaulted these two Swedish women, and that was the whole thing of why he had to run to the embassy and stay there forever. He's really a political prisoner of the worst sort, and really was a threat. He was a threat to really the New World Order. The same people who run the New World Order were people who went after him. And the whole story about the two women is total baloney. He was kind of like a rock star among that community, and those women, whether they were plants or whatever, but I mean, he had, a relation, did what adults do, and then it got twisted that it was abuse and kind of absurd. But anyway, so he's a political prisoner, a modern political prisoner, and really was a threat. I mean, I think that WikiLeaks was an incredibly powerful means where the rule by secrecy was, that whole curtain was dropped where people knew that they could trust WikiLeaks to publish it. And they had a perfect record of publishing authentic documentation. And I don't even know if they're really as effective now that Assange is gone. I just haven't seen as many things, but there were other kind of interesting stuff. There was the Series 7 drops that came from the CIA that had interesting stuff about hot dogs too. If you remember, it was like 65. Obama, $65,000 worth of hot dogs delivered.
Oh, is that where that came from?
Yeah. That was but it corroborated what was going on with the Podesta emails. So there was kind of similar weird, terms that were clearly not real. Like somebody's using coded language for one reason or another. And, anyway, so that was it. Assange, Rich, and really was an incredible time because I thought they had it fixed. I was really surprised when Trump won. I just was like, wow, something must have happened at the end. So you but there's so much power and money at stake when you become president or you run the administration. People may not comprehend it, but it is the immense power really of a level that nobody in history's ever had. Trillions of dollars of the most powerful military with incredible administrative bodies. So if you become, it's the ultimate prize. So if you're a power monger, these things happen because you're playing power games, just like old Rome, trying to become the emperor. In some ways, president is kind of like a short-term emperor, just with that much power. And look at Bush Jr., what he pulled off in 8 years, is the charts. Sacked 2 countries and all kinds of stuff, man.
And they're always pushing the boundaries. So for argument's sake, their power just can kind of increase and increase because between, I guess, Bush and Trump and some of the stuff Biden's doing, and well, any of these presidents really, they'll just push the envelope and then it becomes kind of somewhat status quo sometimes for the next guy.
Right, you have to remember how Rome was a republic, right? So it slowly degraded over time, and then you just had these emperors. So I wouldn't be surprised if something like that could happen here. I think that right now they're fixing these elections through the electronic means. So they're keeping their own people, the oligarchy is maintaining its power through these, and really has probably for at least 20 years, maybe 30 years. All those things were put into power to maintain oligarchical power that really exists above the, binary Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative. And like when George Bush died at 2018, George H.W. Bush, who shows up at the hospital? Bill Clinton. It's like he's over there smiling.
They're good buddies,
Yeah, they were buddies. And the rumor is that Bush was his handler when he was in London for
a Rhodes Scholar?
Yeah, when he was a Rhodes Scholar. So they supposedly go way back. But something about Clinton himself, there's something about him. He's not the same. He's not the father of him is not known. It's not Blythe and it's not Clinton. That's for sure. So something about him, he is a chosen one or something. He was either a Rockefeller or something where it's very strange for his mom to get this kid and all of a sudden show up in D.C. at Georgetown studying. It's just really strange. Like, I'm not saying he's a dumb guy, but there's something of his trajectory that had something different. Like you go from there to Yale Law School, like really one of the best law schools in the world, and somebody's been watching over him for his whole life in a weird way. I don't know.
Well, you look at the famous photograph of him shaking hands with President Kennedy as I guess a teenage boy. And I've wondered about that. Like, who took the picture? Did they take pictures of every one of the scouts? Or was he just because, and then of course, even more notably, in the early 1970s, a very young Bill Clinton, who really had just started out in politics, he wasn't anywhere near, I don't think he was old enough for elective office, but he was already in the loop. He was in a position to drive Hale Box who was the closest thing that the Warren Commission had to a dissenting member. He drove Hale Boggs to the airport. Now, I was reminded that technically he didn't drive him to the flight to oblivion because he took a flight from there and then a transfer to a flight which disappeared. But still, he drove him to the airport for the final time. And I think it should be questioned as to how this really obscure guy got in a position to ride. Hale Boggs was, a longtime representative, notable father of Cokie Roberts. These people are all related to each other, and they just perpetuate themselves. But how did he get in a position to do that? And of course, Boggs disappears. Bodies never found. Planes never found. Along with the father of Nick Beckett, who, if you watch, Alex Jones has him on a lot. His son. His father was on that flight with Hale Boggs as well. So people look at history and people just don't know history, and they look back and see the strange connections that are there. And William mentioned LBJ. LBJ had this guy Mac Wallace, who maybe was his personal hitman. I don't know. Certainly seems to have killed a lot of people, including a guy that was investigating some shenanigans in the agriculture department. And there were deaths associated with that. There were two, kind of like the Ives and Henry deaths. There were 2 or 3 others that were killed because of their connection to the original killing. And then, as you mentioned, there are people that believe, now Roger Stone is one of them, that LBJ had his own sister Josepha killed. Now, in that regard, I guess he'd be number one in terms of, that's pretty beyond the pale, having your own sister silenced. But
and where did Bill Clinton get his start in politics? I think he was in the '64 campaign for LBJ. I think Texas. So he
absolutely. And LBJ was the protege of FDR. FDR loves Roosevelt, and of course FDR. Again, you're not going to get anywhere else, but in my Crimes and Cover-Ups, I talk about some of the people that died when he was in office. And one of the guys, and I can't remember, I think his name was Shaw, but I had never heard of the guy before. And he was a member of the House, Democrat. I think he was a Democrat, but he was a really vicious critic of FDR. And I published some excerpts from the letters that he wrote to FDR, just accusing him of controlling the media and all these horrible things, making great accusations against him. This guy died while walking across the George Washington Parkway, a pedestrian. He was struck and killed. Now, if you've been to D.C., obviously William has, it's a pretty busy thoroughfare, historical thoroughfare. Congressmen ride back and forth on it. My question was, first of all, why was a congressman, I can't just envision, even then, why would they be walking across a busy thoroughfare like that? Would they be chauffeured around? But it becomes even more unbelievable when this guy was legally blind. I consider that. So to me, I think that's one of the ones that really sticks out to me, because he was, and of course Huey Long, my hero, was probably his most the number one seed in his body count list, because Huey Long was, I still think, the most incredible politician that ever lived and would have transformed this country. But you can go again, you can read in my book, Survival of the Richest. I devote a whole section to Huey Long. But he predicted his assassination from the Senate floor. You can still see it in the record in the Senate. He said, they're plotting to kill me, and they're going to do it. This was a month before they killed him. So these things are, and people talk about him. You go down even to things like, I guess it would have been on the Obama body count, the D.C. Madam, Deborah Jean Palfrey, who went on Alex Jones and famously said, "I'm not going to kill myself. I would never commit suicide." What happens? He kills himself. Epstein, nobody believes Epstein killed himself, but that's the official conclusion. So it's these things, and there's nobody there.
It's still going on. Goes back 50 years. Yeah.
It is. It doesn't stop, and it's amazing. That's why when we talked about Norm Macdonald, now people that know him and say apparently he was legitimately sick. Just seems like a long time to be sick with cancer, 9 years, and nobody knew. But I guess it's possible. But
he had a place of leukemia, so it's not like it's an overt tumor or something. Just blood doesn't.
Okay. Well, I just instinctively thought he probably just got the vaccine, like so many of these others do, and they don't tell. So I would like to know what his vaccination status was.
So would I.
If he perhaps had this vaccine recently, and sure. But you're never gonna. You can't ask that question either, because they say, "Oh, what are you talking about?"
Right, but I mean, I think you make a good point about Epstein. There's still these suspicious things, and I'm kind of surprised. I mean, there was also Obama's. There were a couple gay guys from his past.
Yes.
He was a Man's Club, who, if you remember, they had this gay club called Man's Club with a room 11, no less, which I kind of keyed into. But Obama's background, he's got a pretty wide spectrum of relationships, if you know what I mean. But and that's kind of probably how he's possibly controlled, so, but that guy's background also is kind of like Bill Clinton, but also, so Bill Clinton goes to Yale, Robert Hunter Biden goes to Yale Law School. Like that guy's
Crackhead.
He doesn't have the gravitas to actually get his way in there. So these, somehow somebody's pulling strings, I suspect.
Well, I want to keep an eye on the guy that the computer repair for the Hunter Biden laptop. I haven't heard much about him lately. I'd like to check up on him because he could be in danger. Let's put it that way.
for
What's
sure.
the status on the laptop, anyways? Like, I mean, I know these stories, they just try to wash them out, and
Nobody cares. What's the status on Anthony Weiner's laptop? Where's that? That's supposed to get some good stuff too.
When Weiner's charge, he was making child pornography. It wasn't that he was looking at it. He was doing something with somebody recording it. So he had serious charge. I mean, I don't know how long he ended up in jail. But also Hunter Biden, I mean, in my opinion, he's having a relationship with his niece, with his brother's daughter.
14 or 15 or whatever.
Right, so
And the original heard that he was raping, he was videotaped, and I think they do document these things for blackmail purposes, because I don't know also why they do it, but that he was videotaped raping a 10-year-old Chinese girl. Now, is that true? I know that's what I heard was originally.
Are you saying that's in the
Hunter Biden's laptop? That's what I had originally heard.
I saw a picture of him with somebody who looked like.
Well, his niece definitely is there. Just the fact that she's naked a lot, she's underage. That's supposed to be child pornography, but again, they don't go there. And even like when Tucker Carlson covered it, when he was the only one covering it, he never went there.
Right.
He never talked about that.
I mean, anybody who thinks that
Fox talked about the prostitutes
is an idiot. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's such a joke. But but he was. I mean, that guy's like a risk. Hunter was all over the place, and he is weird. Like, he's not normal. He has very strange tattoos of these kind of lakes from upper part of
He's
New
like
York.
Billy Carter. They might have to eventually get rid of him because he's somebody that could talk. I think because he's a crack addict.
Oh, and the other thing,
he's compromised for sure.
Do you know that he's admitted? Like, this is something he said, is that he was in a room and for 13 days all he did was smoke crack and drink vodka. That's what he said. And then he was rolling around on the floor thinking that there were kernels of crack down there, and he was trying to find that. That's the president's son. And the other thing is that his ex-wife was saying, you're not allowed to be around the girl, I forgot her name, the 14-year-old girl anymore. Like, there was a series of texts that was going on. So
well, then the laptop was thrown in the trash or something by her, I think. I mean, there's so many elements to the story, but I wrote a lot of articles about this for American Free Press. I write regularly for them, and you're not going to find that stuff anywhere else. And I still don't understand the Giuliani connection there, because Giuliani obviously goes way back to being part of the 9/11 cover-up, but he was very he went right up to the limits where he clearly was inferring the child pornography stuff. He didn't really come out and say it, but he's saying there's enough stuff on there to get him indicted for all these different crimes and everything. He knew it, but Giuliani's not kind of disappeared, and his career seems to be over. I don't know what happened to the guy, but he's vanished from the scene, it appears.
Good point. But I think that you can see the difference between the Assange 2016 election and the 2020 election without Assange, where the laptop stuff wasn't put out into a place where all the autists and researchers could go through it and really make those connections that other people really couldn't do. I think that was really the open source element of WikiLeaks, which allowed people to really see incredibly crazy stuff, like really kind of Sodom and Gomorrah type stuff. And that didn't happen in the 2020 election. It didn't matter anyway, because the thing was fixed from the beginning. So Trump was not going to win. So it's incredible. I mean, we're in an incredible moment as a country right now. It's really off the chart.
Oh, it is. And we just kind of to bring it full circle to Vince Foster again, to again tell you why anybody out there listening that thinks Donald Trump is still the answer, just consider that one of the things Trump would nibble around the edges at all the time. Because if Roger Stone told me when he first talked about how much he loved my book, he said, "You're going to love Trump. He knows about all the conspiracies." That's exactly what he said. And so Trump would, he would hint at it, and he knew exactly how to go just far enough so that people like us would get it, but no one else would. But he never went details. And he talked about Vince Foster. And he said, some people think he was murdered. Some people don't believe that. And he mentioned that. And then who is the second Supreme Court nominee? Brett Kavanaugh, who led the cover up into Vince Foster's death for Kenneth Starr. And, nobody brings that up. Instead, they're arguing about that stupid woman they brought out of the woodwork talking about something that happened 40 years ago where she couldn't name the location or the date. It's kind of hard to provide an alibi if you don't know the date and place of when it happened. But instead, they got lost in that. And nobody talked about the Vince Foster thing, but Trump would do that all the time. He would do that with Joe Scarborough in Hidden History. I think I'm the only one to write about that. And I tried to investigate that. His family will not talk about what happened. They're still there. I found out her sister's like a principal of some school, and I got the phone number and left a message for her. Never called me back, obviously. So they don't want to talk. And her, if you remember, Trump, again, inferred he obviously knows about this, probably from talking to Roger Stone. Maybe Roger Stone quoted Hidden History to him for all I know. But he said, how about that dead body in your, he hinted at it just enough to really make Scarborough angry. And then if you remember, Lori Klosudis' widow or her husband came out of the woodworks and just blasted Trump. This is hurtful to my family. We don't want to talk. Of course, like all the families, they don't want to talk about it. The last thing if somebody in your family dies under suspicious circumstances, you should want to get at the bottom of it, but not if you're connected, unless you're someone like Linda Ives. That's why she was so unusual. Or Martin Luther King's family, who never rested on like the Kennedys did. They, Coretta Scott King traveled across a couple state lines at an advanced age to testify for James Earl Ray to get a new trial. But most of them are like Gary Webb's family, who believes that he shot himself twice in the head. They actually believe that. I would just love to. You're satisfied with that, especially when the guy was talking about the death threats he was getting. Seth Rich's family, they go nuts over Sean Hannity doing a half-ass investigation. Oh my God, that's terrible. How dare you do it? And it becomes the Sandy Hook type thing. How dare you question anything? This is harassment. And that's where we are as a society now. So it may get to the point where we can't even talk about these body counts anywhere because it may be considered harassment. It's
true. We're there. Yeah, so it's really incredible. If you look at that whole arc of how many people have been mysteriously offed, it's really it's like a serial killing, like a 5-decade serial killing. And then there was the all the people that were killed around JFK too when he died.
Absolutely, yes.
What was it? Belzer wrote that book, right? Hit List or whatever.
Yeah, Belzer and David Wayne, my friend David Wayne, they co-wrote it. But there's so many things. Even I'll give you an example. People don't even know some of the deaths that are connected to the JFK assassination. And when I was a teenager, I got involved with Mark Lane, who was my hero, wrote Rush to Judgment, and I worked for his Citizens Committee of Inquiry as a teenage volunteer. And I was at his office one day, and he got a phone call from Hollywood from Freddie Prinze, who was the biggest comic comedian in the world at that time. It was star Chico and the Man, big stand-up comic. And afterwards he came and talked to us, and Mark Lane really opened up to all and said, Freddie Prinze has been calling him all the time, and that he's obsessed with the JFK assassination. He just sits there and watches a Zapruder film, or he wants to do something to help. And so, and John Barber, my friend John Barber, has said that he interviewed Freddie Prinze, and he talked about the Kennedy assassination. He knew it. Well, that was the end of 76. And Freddie Prinze, I think, killed himself in January of 77, supposedly. But so when that happened, if I hadn't been there at that office that day, when he committed suicide, I wouldn't have had any reason to link him to the JFK assassination. But what was very telling is back in those days before the internet, they always would come up with a lurid kind of a Lifetime made-for-TV movie about these celebrities that died like that. So they made a movie, something like The Last Days of Freddie Prinze. And of course, they just play as they would in the deaths of John Belushi. And John Belushi, by the way, is another one was in the JFK assassination. And I'm still trying to find out exactly how much, but he definitely was. But Freddie Prinze, when they made this movie about his last days, I know for a fact, having been there that day from Mark Lane, that the one thing he was obsessed with in his last days was the JFK assassination. That movie never mentioned it, never touched the subject at all. Instead, just has him doing all the waving guns around and, constantly snorting coke and just being, out of control, crazy wild animal like the typical Hollywood guys are. So, they can lie about that. Again, how many other people that, if I wasn't there to know personally, had been. So there's so many people. Sal Mineo is another one that was murdered very strangely. And Sal Mineo, most people don't know about Orson Welles. Orson Welles was planning a big picture on Sirhan Sirhan and the RFK assassination. Never was able to get it made.
Really?
Yes, and Sal
I didn't
Mineo
know
was
that.
going to play Sirhan Sirhan, and mysteriously murdered. So I mean, there's so many of these cases that come up. The people that, and I can kind of understand why the Hollywood people see. Look what happened to Oliver Stone when he made JFK. I mean, he was. There's a book you can read called JFK, the Book of the Film, and it's just filled with all the attacks on him. Some defense, there was very little defense, but there were a few things written in his defense. But it's amazing to see how upset the entire media was over him making that film. Unprecedented. Dan Rather, editorialized 3 different times on CBS Nightly News before the film was released. Editorialized how irresponsible this was. This is outrageous. Never happened before. So who knows how many more there were, but that's just one example of one that, most people wouldn't have known about that I know personally. And again, I'm sure there are more. And so the body count that we know of is really when there's some kind of information about it. But who knows how many people that are working in big corporations, or maybe they're working, I don't know, in the file room at the CIA or something, have some kind of government job, and they come across some information they're not supposed to see. And they're just, they have a car accident. They kill themselves or whatever, drug overdose. Who knows how many times that happens? So I wouldn't doubt that when we're talking about the already long list of these body counts, that for all these things, that it's probably a lot longer than we could even imagine.
I would agree with that. Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think about it, though.
Yeah.
Just wanted to give a few minutes to Obama, because he's another one that people seem to praise so much and think that, he's done no wrong, and, just bringing up any evil that he's done, people just scoff or, like you said, get offended. So can you guys just tell us a little about, are there any key gems that stick out in the Obama body count? I know there's been, I know he's killed when it comes to drone strikes and whatnot. There's been tons of, and bombing and whatnot, but anything else that you guys can speak to?
Well, I think one notable example, and it involves Donald Trump, the conspiracy theorists. There was, all the controversy back when he was, before he, again, after he got attained office, he just dramatically announced at a press conference, that Barack Obama was born in the United States, period. No explanation, nothing. And his cult just shrugged, but he tweeted out before this. I talk about this in Hidden History. I can't remember the year. I don't know, maybe 2013-ish, something like that. But there was a woman who had certified the obviously forged birth certificate that they came up with to answer the accusations that he wasn't born in the United States, and they came up with this ridiculous forgery that fooled no one except the entire mainstream media.
They had the worst forger ever. They could have found a 14-year-old kid who knew food.
Exactly. But the woman who certified it died in a plane crash, and she was the only fatality. And Trump tweeted it out. Said, very strange, only one to go. And of course, he caught all kinds of hell for it. This was candidate before he was a candidate, I think. And so that one sticks out. There was another one that, I can't remember what the connection was, but the woman was, I think, related to somebody in his administration. And I had the details in Hidden History. You might have remember it, Jordan, but she drove her car into her garage and it exploded. I mean, it was just, again, this way nobody dies like that. It just sounded so ridiculous.
I remember. Yep.
Yeah, and so but most of the deaths around Obama seem to be related to his curious history. And I was on a show the other night where I was being challenged about this stuff, and I was saying, look, this is I don't know, for they're some people believe Obama was created in a lab somewhere because he doesn't appear to have a history. And that should be questioned.
Do you know that nobody can tell a story of seeing him at Columbia?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The guy that taught a very big class there said, I taught all the notable politicians that came through here. I don't remember Barack Obama.
But that's the whole thing. Nobody can say, yeah, we lived together. Yes, I saw him in there. We went out for drinks. We nobody can say anything because he wasn't there. It's
Oh,
all
and
And
Andrew
then,
Breitbart.
oh,
You know,
another funny thing. Sorry, one more thing, but I think he got the head of the law review at Harvard without putting any work in. He was just granted to become the editor of the Harvard Law Review or something like that. Like, how did you get that? It's like another Bill Clinton thing. Like somebody's watching over you. Make sure you're
well,
cleaned up.
he definitely was, but Andrew Breitbart's dead. You know, that was probably one of the more notable ones during the Obama administration, because this guy, I mean, again, I'm not, Breitbart News is like Fox News, really. I mean, it's not like they're going that far, but Breitbart had very, you know, it was just right before or after Michael Hastings of Rolling Stone made the same kind of, another one that's the Obama body count. He made, both of them made these conspiratorial declarations that, hey, man, I'm on to something big. And then Michael says, I'm going underground for a while. I'm on to a really big story. And then he runs his, you know, car into a tree at like 500
No,
miles
no,
an
no,
hour or
no.
something.
The car ended up at a tree.
Yeah.
His car exploded and the
Yeah.
engine block ripped
Yeah.
off and ended up on Highland, right there at Highland and Melrose. Then the body came up to a tree. So
Yeah, that one had a lot of the real rabbit hole elements to it too. I remember watching videos, and again, nobody but me comments on these things, but they had what I call elements that are completely out of place, and they're almost Truman Show type things, where for some reason the fire department just didn't come for a long time to the scene, but this is no joke. This is the middle of the night. You had a rabbi in full regalia that I guess lived across the street or something.
well,
Who
that is
came up?
that is a Jewish part of LA.
Yeah, well, he comes out with a huge hose, and he's the only one fighting the fire. And it's like, what's wrong with this picture? It made no sense. But that was just something I remember. But Breitbart, he more notably said, "Hey, look, I'm going to bust this. I'm going to finally. I got a video that's going to show exactly what was going on with Obama at Harvard. You know, this has got to be seen to be believed." And then he drops dead at 40 or whatever, however, very young. Drops dead like early 40s, something like the next day, you know, on the street. And then for good measure,
Brentwood in LA. Yeah, nice part of town.
yeah. And then for good measure, the coroner dies mysteriously shortly thereafter that.
I think they found out that coroner was verified to have been poisoned.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
he died by poison.
Yeah, I mean, so this is beyond mafia stuff. And the witness who saw him die and described, really, he disappeared for a while. They took a lot. They had a couple of private investigators. They finally found him, and it didn't make any sense. Like, they couldn't find his family for a while. There's a lot of intrigue there. But I saw that video. I don't know if you ever saw it, William, but because I was interested, they finally released what they said was a video. And if you watch that video, it can't be what he was talking about, because first of all, it has no relevance at all, and it is the strangest video. It was a video about, I can't remember the guy, some black radical that, you know.
Yeah, wasn't it White or whatever? Wasn't it supposedly his pastor or whatever? I don't know.
Well, it was I can't. He's kind of a, I can't remember that. I think he's an academic or something, but he was a black radical guy, typical, you know, full of, you know, racist talk against whites and everything. So of course, young Obama gravitated to him. But Obama's the one that gave the speech talking about this guy, and if you watch it, the camera is almost never on young Barack Obama. I've never seen a film where the camera doesn't pan to the speaker, and instead it goes over the crowd. Was it Henry Gates? Maybe it was Henry Gates. I think that was his name. They show him a lot. And they do briefly, they'll show like from a distance, but it's never clear enough, because of course a lot of us want to see this young Barack Obama because we haven't seen too much of him. And it's very curious that, now I don't know if maybe this was the tape and Breitbart was going to say something like that, you know, why isn't it show Obama or something? I don't know, but it's just on the surface of it. It didn't seem like there was anything beyond that, but it was very, very curious tape. And if you could, I'm sure you can't find it now, but I remember watching it and just thinking, I've never seen a speech like that. You know, when you cover a speech, your camera's trained on the speaker. You might pan to the audience a few times, but most of the time it's going to be on the speaker. Not this time. It was the exact opposite. It was on the audience almost all the time, and they'd pan to the speaker briefly here and there. So whatever it was, that was a very, Obama really did have a pretty impressive body count, obviously.
When I was watching the Hastings Memorial, they had all these people come up, and like he had some kind of new assistant, and I was just watching these people. I'm like, that's probably the spook. That's the informant. That's the one. I was just like,
Yeah.
this guy was, I mean, he made mistakes. So
Well,
I think,
and his wife is another one that just kind of threw everything under the bus and has no interest in what happened to him. I mean,
she doesn't. Yeah.
I
Look,
mean,
his first wife died in Iraq, I think.
Oh,
Hastings' first wife died. So, like, she probably is like, oh, I don't want to be number 3. I'm not going to do that.
Well, we'll leave it at that for today, guys. It's a huge topic, and there's so much to talk about. But I think we've covered a lot of interesting stuff and a lot of important stuff. So for the listeners and viewers, make sure to look into these things. I'll include some of the resources that we spoke about in the episode description, as well as the resources from our guests. So quickly, William, where can my viewers find you?
I have a podcast or a broadcast. William Ramsey investigates some investigative journalism. My 5 documentaries are on Vimeo, and my books can be found on Amazon or at my website, WilliamRamseyInvestigates.com.
Beautiful. And Donald, how about yourself?
Well, I have 2 shows. The Donald Jeffries Show, which airs Wednesdays from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Ocelli.com. And then Jeff Rentz plays the reruns. America Unplugged plays the reruns. You can find it lots of places. As you're showing now, my blog is can be accessed at donaldjeffries.media. DonaldJeffries.news, and my writings on Substack can be, which I write regularly there, can be accessed by donaldjeffries.media. So donaldjeffries.news, donaldjeffries.media. My books, my 6th book is coming out next month. It's about showbiz. So you can look on Amazon or search it for me, and you'll be able to find out all the information about my books.
And you also have a new printing of Hidden History, or
no, Crimes and Cover. Yeah, that's
Crimes
actually
and Cover-ups. Okay,
it's coming out. Yeah, October. So actually, on Borrowed Fame, the Showbiz book is coming out, I think, November 1st. The paperback of Crimes and Cover-ups, which features a new introduction by me, an updated introduction, and a new chapter as well. So it has extra material.
Great.
Coming out next month. So that has a foreword by Ron Paul. So I'm very proud of that.
Awesome. Okay, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time, and we'll be in touch soon. And enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Okay.
All right, take care.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.
Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.